All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back for another awesome episode. We got another incredible guest with us today. We got Gareth Sapstead in the house. He has coached Olympians, fitness models, and regular people to achieve insane results. He also happens to be a multiple times published author, writer, and international speaker. So he is well equipped to teach us a thing or two today. So, Gareth, welcome to the show.
What a great introduction.
Okay, we got to start off on a high note.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so it'd just be good today to chat about, the various, I think, realities behind some of the elite level kind of transformations that I put people through. Maybe some of the risks involved in that, the positives, the negatives, just to, I suppose, obviously we were chatting before actually recording, but just to give people a better idea, especially when it comes to social media and things like that. Like what is the reality of things? What does it take to get there? But then also, what are the long term potential risks? What happens in the long term? What are people doing to get there? All things like that. So it'd be really cool just to kind of give your listeners a bit of a reality check, just so they can understand what they're going through a little bit more. Maybe,
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily saying lowering their expectations, but just kind of getting a real world view of things.
Yeah, it's a bit of a peek behind the curtain of like what
Yeah.
actually goes into these people we see on the magazines that are on these stages that have achieved the craziest results of people like any humans on earth. Because it does feel like I know sometimes like growing up, somebody who usually always watched the or picked up the muscle mags, like you see
Yeah.
Ronnie Coleman, Branch Warren, and you're like, I could be like that one day. And it's like
Yeah.
it's really depressing when you realize, no, you can't.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for the ladies. Like they pick up like women's world or anything like that. They see these toned bodies. They're like, that's the look I want to go for. But you don't really understand exactly what that takes.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, especially when it comes to, I just call it physique competitions. So, like bikini competitor, physique competitors, bodybuilding competitor, like Ronnie Coleman, for example. By definition, those are the most in shape people in the world, right? They're being judged on their shape. And, it requires great genetics. It requires, it's a full-time job for these people, hence why it's called professional bodybuilding. They get paid for it,
Well,
although at some level,
we gotta give Ronnie his due. He was a cop. He was a cop.
yeah, to be fair, he was a cop before they weren't paying the big bucks.
Yeah.
Imagine him pulling you over. Like
I would
you're
be
not
like,
gonna mess
yes,
around.
you're 100% right. I don't even know what I did, but you're right.
Exactly, exactly. But these people are, I suppose, the pinnacle of the physiques that we should be looking at to aspire to. But the reality is that most people shouldn't really be aspiring to that. They should be aspiring to something else, because to be able to get to that, as I said, requires great genetics. It requires it's a full-time job, and it requires other things as well, which people don't often speak about as well. So it's just good to, as I said, get that reality check as to what it actually requires to get there.
Yeah, and I think a good place to start on that is like, for example, I think one of the big disconnects is the level of accuracy and the level of follow through with the plan. Because
Mm.
I know for me, for example, when I get clients, usually the big thing is, all right, so we didn't get like 3 days of tracking this week. Let's get four. What does it look like when it comes to a competitor? Like when it comes to their level of like, we need to hit these numbers all the time. Like, how is their consistency with that, with the people that do the best?
Yeah, and I say this all the time, and I probably shouldn't. It probably offends some people, but the more elite, the most elite are like robots. And then the average person can't really connect with that or understand what that actually means. But from a coaching perspective, whatever I tell them to do, they will just do it. My athletes are very kind of very trusting in me as well. So although I give them the knowledge as to why they're doing something, they don't really actually question why they're doing something. They'll just do it.
Yeah.
Yes, coach, I'll get it done, because that's what I need to get done to get from where I'm right now to where I want to be. And whatever that is, that they're willing to do it. If I say to them, look, you've got to do 5 hours of cardio today, they'll do 5 hours of cardio today. No, I've never ever programmed 5 hours of cardio, but like you get the idea, which
Yep. And
also
real
does,
quick, while we're on
yeah,
that topic, because I know people think cardio burns all the fat, can
yeah,
we just tell people like how much cardio actually goes into it? And are you the type of coach that holds it off till the very, very last minute?
yeah, no. So the reality is everyone's completely different, and it's very interesting that it's good that this podcast is specifically, I suppose, your biggest audience is women, kind of maybe perimenopause or that kind of age. And that's where we
Yep.
see normally the biggest changes in terms of what works now versus what would have worked when you were, say, 25 years old. It is completely different. Not for everyone, but it is different. So reality is I've got, similar age range. I've got people who are literally in the best shape of their life right now, few weeks out from competing, will probably get their pro card in the next few weeks, and she has not done any cardio whatsoever. She's lifting 4 days a week. She's sleeping very well, and she's hitting a daily step count of about 12K steps. That is it. And she, again, just to kind of give you everything, she's still on around 1,600 calories, and she's quite petite as well. Okay, I won't go into specific weights and stuff, but she's
Yeah.
quite petite.
But we can
And but
assume her body fat level is borderline essential, like basically flirting with like unhealthily
oh yeah,
tiny.
completely,
Yeah.
completely, yeah, it's completely unhealthy. I'll give you an example of someone else completely different to that of a similar age range. So someone competing this weekend, she's a figure competitor, masters figure competitor. She's mid 40s. We've had to lift, so we're lifting 5 days a week, but she's also doing 5 days a week of cardio. Okay, so her cardio is up to about 40 minutes of cardio, low intensity, steady state stuff. Nothing too strenuous. She mostly walks at a brisk pace on a low
So
incline
she's
treadmill.
not like killing herself in a high intensity interval
No,
session or
she
anything
she
like
she's
that.
not killing herself. And as far as programming of cardio goes, that's actually the high end of things. Like it's very rare I've ever programmed more than having to do 40 minutes of cardio 5, 6 days a week. If I do, what I tend to say is, okay, that 40 minutes of cardio, that's somewhere in your day. It could be fasted. We can go into that if you want to. It could be fasted. It might be somewhere else. It might be in the PM. Either way, it's away from your training session, your lifting session, which is the
Hmm.
priority for us. So you've got your cardio there. And let's say I want you to get a little bit more output. I want you to burn a few more calories because I don't really want to dig any deeper with bring your calories down. I might add an extra, say, 15 minutes at the end of your resistance training workout. So instead of that 40 minute cardio session becoming 55 minutes, because I want you to do an extra 15 minutes of cardio, I've done 40 minutes of cardio, which is still there. I've just bolted on an extra 15 minutes at the end of your weight session just to get a little bit extra output there. Okay. But it's not a game changer. It's just a way to increase output. But as I said, that probably in the last 5 years is the most cardio I think I would have ever programmed for someone. So that's what, 55 minutes a day, 6 days a week. That's the top end. Okay. But as
Yeah.
I said, I've got a number of people right now that are nearly show ready or nearly photo shoot ready that are doing zero cardio whatsoever. Um, I will say that the people that are doing zero cardio also aren't people that are working at a desk all day and only getting in 4,000, 5,000 steps. So you've got to take into account that as well. Because to get away with that, if you're so sedentary, if you've got that desk job, if you're not moving a lot, and say you're hitting 3,000, 4,000 steps, but you're still lifting, then your calories that you're consuming will probably need to be relatively low, which obviously has other implications as well. And we don't want to be starving you. We don't want to have kind of long term hormonal effects and things like that. And we want you to be eating a good amount of food. So I would always verge on the idea of, I think it was John Berardi that coined the term G flux. So the idea of consuming more calories and doing more. So rather than doing less and eating less, it's simply be someone that can look. burns a lot of calories, so you can eat a lot of calories, rather than
Yeah.
being the person that doesn't burn a lot of calories, so can't eat a lot of calories. It's just the concept of G flux.
Yeah, and I love that like distinction because I think a lot of people get very confused when it comes to like just eat more to lose weight. And it's like,
Yeah,
but that eating more should result in more energy to do more things, which results in burning more calories overall. It's
yeah,
not just eat more and do the same thing.
exactly. And actually, that's a really good point. So, um, obviously, just briefly mentioned step count. Now, step count seems to be a bit of a thing, not a thing of the moment, but like it's spoken about like it's something special. Now, all step count is a way to gauge physical activity. Okay. Now, there's various ways to gauge non-exercise physical activity. It could be gardening, it could be doing the laundry, things like that. Technically, that is physical activity. The problem is there's no tracker that I'm aware of that tracks that stuff.
If
So
they do, they need to name it the Italian tracker because when we talk with our hands, I swear that's where I burn all my calories. Like I'm doing this all
exactly.
day.
But it's a way to standardize or increase non-exercise physical activity. It's the easiest way to do it. So
Yeah, so
there's
we're
no
talking neat for anybody listening right now, the non-exercise
exactly,
activity. Yeah.
exactly, because the problem is, and again, there's nothing special about step count. There's nothing special about 10,000 steps, right?
Are you
It
kidding
was
me?
it was a
Really?
number that was made up by some, I think, some
That's not the
Japanese guy.
magic point where my body just like operates optimally. That's not a
I
thing.
know. That being said, it's not a bad number, right? The reason why we still use it, we don't use it, but it's a good number to aim for a lot of people. Okay, or let's say that 8 to 12K. It's like, it's if it isn't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. But what happens, because you hit the point, is that the deeper we go into a diet, the longer we consume fewer calories for, naturally, without even knowing it, our output goes down. We burn less, we move less, don't we? We fidget less. We because we know we're consuming fewer calories. We feel a little bit more tired. We have more reasons to sit on the couch and not do a lot and be more lazy. So
Yep.
automatically, what happens is that our energy output goes down. We burn fewer calories when we're dieting because we just end up doing less. We end up being more sleepy. We end up having an excuse to be more tired, etc.
Yeah.
So to standardize a step count, it just means that we're forced to make sure that we're still maintaining the output that we did when we weren't in that caloric deficit.
Yeah, it made me just think of, I know Lane Norton at one point got on his stories. I think he was deep into show prep and he's like, nobody really realizes how tired you are doing this stuff. I
Yeah.
physically did not want to grab my remote because I thought that would cost too much energy. I just did not have it in me. And
And
that's
it's
what people don't
mad.
realize. The
Different,
calories affect
yeah,
you.
they do affect you, and that's the thing with competition prep, or even like if you're really aggressively doing a photo shoot prep for someone. In that those final stages, we just call it zombie brain. You don't always know what you're doing. You forget a lot of things. You're not the nicest person to be around. Everyone's been on a diet and been grumpy, right?
Yep.
But times that by 10, and that's what a deep stage of a competition prep feels like, combined with walking around like a zombie, not knowing what you're doing. Your brain's barely functioning. It's honestly, so to reach for a remote is, yeah, it can be a challenge for some people. Other
Yeah.
people can, in the deep stage of a prep, can kind of switch modes into more like work mode because they use it as a distraction for being hungry, for being zombie like, for having low energy. So
I
they
honestly
kind
didn't
of
even think about that until you said it. I'm like, that was totally me when I was prepping for a show. I'm like, I just got to work so I don't feel hungry.
exactly. So you actually get more productive, or you think you're more productive. The work you produce when you're doing it, like maybe you finish your show and afterwards you look back at it like that was a load of junk, but you seem like you're more productive because you need to have that focus. When I was prepping for my last show, I was like that. I got more stuff done, but it was just to stay in the zone, have something to focus on, and not have to think about the things that would bug me more.
Yeah. And I think that this is the level that a lot of people feel like they have to get like the regular result, or I say
Yeah,
regular in like loose terms, because to bring it back to John Berardi, like the PN certification, like has a great concept where it's like level one, level two, level three. Like
yeah,
level one is most people listening right now, where it's like we're at that point where we do the basic stuff. We're going to get really good results. Right now,
yeah,
we're talking about level three stuff where you have
yeah,
to take it to that next level.
yeah. We're, going back to that thing of accuracy and how adherent these people are, then we're talking about, I don't know, someone could report to me that, coach, I'm really struggling with fats. I'm going way over on fats. Okay. And just FYI, I tend to coach a macros focus, a flexible dieting focused approach. The reason I coach that approach is because the people that I'm working with, diet quality, food quality is already there. Okay. So we're not having to work too much with the food quality. We're not having to kind of focus on, you need to be eating this, you need to be eating this, you need to be eating
Yeah.
this.
You're not coaching
It's
them on like, this is what lean protein is. This is what has fiber
exactly,
in it. Like they're already
yeah.
pros on that.
They know that it's adjusting the ratios of those foods and the timing of those foods. And yeah, obviously I'm advising on certain foods, but it's not so much this is what a lean protein is, this is a good carb, this is fiber, etc. So I coach a more macros focused approach, a flexible dieting approach. There are some people that work well if I'm writing meal plans for them and updating meal plans. Those people just are people that just don't want to think too much about it, want to eat the exact same thing every single day, and maybe in the deep stage of a contest prep, just don't want to think about it. They just want to eat exactly what it says on the piece of paper, and for coach to update
And,
that.
and the key thing there is that they know it's a short-term thing. Like it's not, oh, I'm going to do this meal
Exactly.
plan forever.
Exactly. Yeah, they know there's like an end point to that meal plan. But going back to my point, because I know I'm kind of weaving around it a little bit. Going
Doing a
back to my
beautiful
point,
job
so
of it. We're covering a lot here. My notes section
so
is loaded right now.
love it. So that person's saying that. So again, you've got context, macros focus approach. That person that's saying, Coach, I'm really struggling with hitting my fats. I'm going over all the time. I might have programmed 50 grams of fats for that person. They've gone over to 52. Okay. So in that person's head, 52 grams is them going way over on their fats, right? Whereas the reality is, you and I both know an extra 2 grams of fat, 18 calories or so of fat, especially when they're calories they're hitting anyway. They might just have maybe under eaten on carbs a little bit that day, means absolutely nothing. But that's what I mean when I say that these people, like, and this is why they are at that level. These people really do sweat the small stuff, and that's where I come in that I'm good at really sweating the small stuff, and that's also why I'm not a great coach for someone like the people you work with. I'm just not
Yeah.
that person.
Different
I'm
styles call for different
different
approaches.
style. Yeah, I'm not gonna necessarily um teach the big rocks, because your clients, or some, should we say, some people that are just starting out their journey, they need to understand those big rocks and really focus on the big rocks. For the people that I'm largely working with, they know the big rocks, and we remind them of the big rocks and make sure that they're sticking with the big rocks.
Yeah.
But we're also, the small pebbles are being thrown in there as well. We're
And
really having to refine them.
when we say big rocks, like can we lay it out for the people of like what is like something automatic that like the competitors do that like probably general population would still like the average person probably wouldn't have down perfectly, but they'd have it most of the time. Like what are some things that competitors are just automatic, like don't even have to think about it?
I think people always say it, but it is the consistency when they hit the gym, like, to to the degree that some people would call it like having an issue, having an obsession.
Yeah.
They hit the gym consistently. Like, I know I have an obsession. The difference between having an obsession with that or an addiction with that versus having an addiction with smoking is that you'd argue that my addiction is a little bit healthier. But there is an element of addiction which allows them to be more consistent in the gym. So let's say
Yeah.
they set to themselves a target of hitting the gym 5 days per week every single week. They are addicted to making sure that they are hitting the gym 5 days a week every single week. If they do four, Like they are not a nice person to be around. Actually, in fact, you'll rarely find that person do for, because they would have just found the time just to get that fifth in, even if it was at 1 o'clock in the morning on some day that just, that they had to, or they had to wake up super early one day, they would get it done. And that's when it boils back down to its consistency. So
Yeah.
rather than them having to think that I've got to be consistent, I've got to stick to my plan, they're never having to think that. The consistency comes through obsession, and it comes through having the drive to get to somewhere. Or even sometimes the guilt that you haven't made it to the gym. Like it just becomes the point where you
Yeah.
just can't miss a workout. So they've got
Yeah.
it just it's ingrained in. It's a habit. It's there. It's not going away. They could probably, myself, I could never imagine myself not going to the gym. 80 years old, I'd like to think that I make it to 80 and I'm still going to the gym 5 days a week because I'm enjoying it, or doing something active.
Yeah, because you have
You
the
know,
knowledge and the scalability to be like, this is what I need where I'm at right now. And then down the line, I'll go do that. I'll do this a little
yeah,
bit less like hands on the reins and then
yeah,
kind of scale. And you know how to do that. Whereas the average person who like jumps into their first show because they want to get in shape, like
yeah,
they don't realize that. I mean, if we're being brutally honest, you're flirting with eating disorders, like doing this
fully,
style. Because like I know when I was studying for CSCS over there,
yeah,
okay, I was mid prep and I was like doing the anorexia nervosa section and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
check, 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 check. And I
yeah.
was like, shit, this is kind of risky. Like it's not a guarantee, but it is risky.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you get,
As you say, it's yeah. You go through different phases. I just use myself as an example because I competed in March. Um, and in a month or so afterwards, we had our second baby. So I timed it that I would be a zombie. I'm not too much of a zombie, but I timed it to be a zombie and then come out of that, reverse diet, etc. I knew a new baby coming because it's our second, that training would be hindered in some way anyway. And I just timed it well. So right now, she's 4 months old. I'm still able to go to the gym 5 days a week. It just, my time at the gym is more limited. I fit it in whenever I want to. I'm not there for a long period of time. I'm not aiming to compete or anything. I'm going through the motions at the moment. I'm
and
just, I'm,
you're adjusting the expectations around it. You're not
yeah,
expecting I'm going to maintain this level of leanness from the stage
yeah.
now going into full dad mode.
Exactly. So, for your listeners that might not understand or might not be familiar. So, what happens? You dig deep, you do your show, you peak. Okay, so people understand again a peak. You're maybe manipulating carbohydrates. You're maybe manipulating water. You're maybe manipulating sodium. I personally only do certain things, but just generally speaking, people manipulate those things to make sure that on the day that they compete, they are looking their quote unquote best. Okay, they're
Yeah.
looking their
Or taking the
leanest,
photos,
or
like the
taking
photo
or to
shoots.
take the photos for the
It
photo
only
shoot.
lasts for like how long though?
Literally can last for the day, right?
Yeah.
So
Or maybe even like hours before they
yeah,
actually get a meal in
you're
them.
peaking to look your best for that one day. Okay, and that's it. So um even the day before, you're not looking like you are today. And the day after, sometimes the day after, you can look pretty good. But that's because you've eaten a lot of junk food, you've eaten a lot of sugar, you
That
wake
next
up.
day when all the sodium and carbs hit, you're like, I look amazing.
Yeah, and people have got to be a little bit careful about that because you can have sort of hypoglycemia and things like that, and have
Yeah.
some blood sugar issues and things,
Yeah.
and digestive, because for 12, 14, 20 weeks, whatever, you might not have eaten a donut, and then
Right.
suddenly you
What is
finish your show.
bloat really? What is bloat? Like 10 slices of pizza and a burger that you haven't had in 6 months? Like, come on.
Exactly. And because your brain hasn't, I suppose, recognized that kind of food for however long you've been prepping for, as soon as you have it, those light bulbs just go off and you're like, ding, ding, ding. Yes, more, 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 more.
Yep.
And also because you don't have a focus anymore, in theory, there's no show going ahead for a lot of people. and there's no purpose necessarily to diet, suddenly you've just given yourself permission to eat whatever you want. And that's when people
Yep.
start really rebounding. And some people, especially post show, thyroid hormones are super low. You might have lost some lean muscle mass, so your metabolic rate's probably lower than what was previously. You're lighter, so naturally you're burning fewer calories. You just can't handle the food that you did at the start of your prep or when you're in maintenance. So you
Yep.
gain that weight back very fast. Some people
It's like you
gain
were
that.
there for my second show where I gained 40 pounds in 3 months. It's wild.
Yeah, yeah, it is mad. And some people gain even more weight post show than what they were before they prepped for their show. And that's why post show you've got to give people like a bit of a purpose. You've got to, for me personally, I always say to people that reversing period after your show is harder than your prep. Your prep, your focus, there's something to go towards, there's a goal in mind, prep for photo shoot, prep for show, there's a date, right? You've got to get in a bikini or take your shirt off or whatever for a day. Post show, there's nothing to aim for, right? You've kind of lost it. So yeah, it becomes really hard just to gather things up and just get a normal diet back in place, a semi-healthy diet. And as I said, as you said, it is an eating disorder, but because we are doing something that's perceived as healthy, it's not as spoken about.
Yeah, because you
So from a
don't really
psychological
feel the
level,
physical ramifications until like years down the line, assuming you do it poorly. Because I
yeah,
like how you brought up the hormone factor. Like with your athletes, you like take peeks at blood work, right? To see
yeah,
like where they're
yeah,
at. Now, when they're prepping, because I think this is a good topic for people to also understand, because there's a big population of people that are like, it's my hormones, it's my hormones. I can't lose weight because of the hormones. But
yeah,
these competitors that are putting themselves in not ideal situations hormonally can still reliably lose weight week after week after week. Is
yeah,
that your experience with this? Like, where have you
yeah.
noticed that?
Yeah, definitely. So, I see blood work all the time. There are always, red markers on blood work. If you're getting all your blood work done, there's something that's going to be in the red zone. Whether it's unhealthy or not, that's something you've got to question. But yeah, naturally, as you are, I already mentioned it, but the more and more you diet, the deeper and deeper you diet, your thyroid hormones get messed up. T3, T4 levels go down, which means you're burning fewer calories. Essentially, it's one of those primary drivers of how many calories you burn. Obviously, for enhanced competitors, they take some things to compensate for that, to ensure that their thyroid remains at a level.
Some
Yeah,
goodies to give them a
they
little bit
take
of a
some
bump.
exactly, they take some extra stuff, but it's not to enhance their thyroid, it's to maintain that thyroid level when they're dropping into that deep deficit. Okay. The reality is most average people that are in shape, unless you obviously have a thyroid issue, then thyroid there very rarely is an actual issue there. And it's normally within a green zone level. You've obviously got effects from various other hormones, testosterone, especially in men, and same with women as well. Testosterone, is one of the most prevalent hormones. I think women have, if I remember rightly, women have more testosterone than estrogen. Obviously, it's just not as big of an acting hormone, I suppose,
Yeah.
for women.
Yeah.
But
Percentage
having
wise, it's like obviously way higher in guys.
it's
Like if
way
we're talking
exactly,
percentage wise.
yeah, I suppose ratios, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Ratios. Oh, back to
but
math class. Please no.
yeah, yeah. But especially testosterone in women. If your testosterone is going down, if you're perimenopausal, if you're postmenopausal, you go to you go to your primary care physician, you get your hormones tested, your testosterone is probably low. Yeah, that's probably been affecting things. That's probably been affecting, the muscle mass that you're able to carry, which obviously affects the amount of calories you can burn because muscles metabolically active tissue
Yeah.
and burns calories through nothing and through movement. It's obviously going to affect other things like sex drive. It's going to affect your sleep. And sleep, even though directly it does not affect fat loss, sleep does affect fat loss, right?
Yeah.
If we
Because
are
it affects
sleeping well,
every behavior that's associated with eating. and moving.
Exactly. And moving. Especially when blood sugar levels and things like that. If you don't sleep well, your blood sugars for the next day are all over the place, which causes you to automatically crave more food that's
Yep.
sugar, sweet, etc. So you get those peaks and troughs, which just causes you to crave
And
more and more
and
sugar.
it's like, and you're eating all this sugar, and not only that, you're less insulin, your sensitivity to insulin is lower, so it's
Is
like
low,
now
yeah.
you're a perfect storm for pre-diabetes and diabetes and all that fun stuff.
Exactly. And you're not sleeping well, which means your recovery is impaired. So your strength training sessions aren't as efficient, which obviously has the other effects, other knock-on effects from that as well. But as I said, I've got
Yeah.
someone prepping at the moment who is in the best shape of her life. She's done multiple shows. This is her most successful. This will be her most successful show today. I know it coming up because she's in her best shape ever. And previously, she was lifting 5 days a week and doing, I think, 5 or 6 days a week of cardio for like 30 to 60 minutes, let's say, that kind of approach with things. Calories were at a similar level, versus now, calories are at a similar level, but she's only lifting 4 days a week and she's just maintaining a step count and she's in better shape. And PS, there's no extra goodies involved in that either. It's just the main difference, she's sleeping well, she's recovering well. Argue she's a year older than when she originally did that first approach. So you could argue that things could be worse because she's a little bit older, but actually, she's improving with age. You know,
Well, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to respecting your body and putting as much work as you possibly can in while getting the best result. Now, I think a lot of people struggle to realize it's not how much you can do, it's how much you can do and recover from.
yeah, yeah. It's I don't know who came up with the quote, but it's not how hard you work, it's how hard you can recover.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
totally stole that one that I said from Matt Wenning. So that's
okay.
100% his.
But yeah, it is that, and obviously ensuring that you've got the right nutrition coming in, and going back to that question of what do they do that the average person doesn't, those big rocks, it's consistency. So it's
Yeah.
consistency with
While
training.
feeling shitty.
Well, yeah, it's consistency with training as well as consistency with nutrition. And that means just that they tend to just be people that enjoy eating good food, cook things from scratch, or meal prep very well. It's things that come more naturally. And also, but at the same time, especially in the off season, if they're not competing, they're having a meal out every week. They're enjoying some food. But when they're having, it's interesting, when they're having a meal out, it doesn't tend to be something like a burger and fries or a pizza or something. Or
It's like
sometimes,
the
yeah, it
salmon.
is. Yeah, it's the salmon, or it's some steak, right? It's some steak and
Yeah.
potatoes, and it's more of a meat and potatoes kind of job rather than a refined food kind of job. Just because,
Yeah.
as I said, those people just tend to enjoy the feeling that they can digest food well, that food is being put to work somewhere. They're
Mhm.
using food as a fuel to nourish themselves and get somewhere and to feel good about themselves, rather than food as something that's like a quick fix on your tongue, in your mouth, feels good, tastes good. Oh, it's gone. I feel like junk. So again, it's a mindset thing, I think. And as I said, it all boils down to them just being more consistent with things. And as I said, that those are the big rocks, really. It's consistency in everything that they do, and they enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's the key factor is like there has to be some enjoyment level, which I think competitors who like do it right at really high levels have it down where they get a lot of satisfaction from their efforts. And I think a lot of the average people are like, "Oh, I just have to do what they do and diet down like crazy. I'm going to hate it
Yeah,
the whole way, but I'm going to make it there and then I'll figure it out after that."
yeah, and I think that's the problem as well. In that people, let's use social media as a good example.
Yep.
But people, especially on social media, like quick fixes do well as posts, right? If you come out with a quick fix solution like a special diet food, a special supplement, something that's
Or
top secret that the
yeah,
pros use, whatever,
or a 30-day
that gets,
transformation.
yeah, the 30-day
Yeah.
transformation. That's the stuff that gets the attention over the unfortunately the boring stuff, which because people don't want to talk about the consistency. People don't want to talk about the mindset that those people have versus other people. People don't want to talk about the psychology of nutrition. I put out a post, I think yesterday, on Instagram. It did terribly. I knew it would do terribly. Okay,
But it had to
uh,
go out.
it had to go out. I knew it would do terribly. And the post basically said that one of the best things you could do regarding your nutrition is define your phase, define what you're doing. Okay, because you take a lot of consultations just like me. The main thing that people say on a consultation, I want to lose fat and gain muscle, or gain muscle can be swapped for build shape, right? I want to lose fat and I want to build shape. Okay. Now, everyone you see in the gym has that in their head, from the highest level competitor to the person that stepped into the gym for the first time. I want to lose fat and build muscle. Okay. Now, that isn't a phase. That isn't some clearly defined thing that we're going to be working towards in the next 3 months, let's say. Okay. Whereas if you define your phase, and it can be as simple as, okay, in this phase, my priority is to retain muscle tissue and lose body fat. Okay. And I want to lose this amount of body fat. Once you've defined that phase, now you know what to do, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to be doing everything you possibly can to make sure that that happens. The trouble is, for people that don't have a coach, and I'm not plugging coaching here of any kind, okay? But the person that doesn't have a coach still has in the back of their head, I want to lose body fat and I want to gain muscle, I want to gain shape. Okay. So they might start that approach and have good intentions to prioritize fat loss whilst trying to retain muscle. Okay. However, they might see an Instagram post, they might hear someone talking in the gym, they might watch a YouTube video or something that talks about some specific way you need to eat or train to build muscle, or it starts talking about, oh, you need to be in a surplus of calories to optimally build muscle, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly that person, just like that, has switched from fat loss into trying to build muscle. They've come off their diet, they've changed their training, and going back to consistency, because they've switched, by definition, they're inconsistent now. They've switched their training focus. They've not been consistent with sticking with the phase that they should be in. So, as a coach, just like what you do with your clients, is your job to keep them on track and focus as to what these goals are over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever. So, that post that I put out did not do well, and I knew it wouldn't. And I think at the beginning of the post, I said, this is something that no one's talking about because they don't. It's the boring stuff. But if someone simply just defines what they want to achieve as a priority over the next X amount of time and focus on that, then just like a sniper approach, they will hit that, rather than taking more like that shotgun approach and doing a bit here, bit there, and never actually hitting the target. But just
Yeah.
simply defining what they're doing, it just makes a huge difference. And that's, I think, as coaches, that's largely what we do, is that we define what we've got something to aim for. Let's make sure we get there. And it
Yeah.
might be
And
it might be over a year, right?
mm-hmm.
We want to achieve something this time next year. And if that's the case, we as coaches can break that down into phases where each phase has a specific focus. Phase one might be building some lean, or it might be recomposition, first phase. If someone is in a position to recomp, easy, right? Recomposition first phase. Then let's have a look. Let's see where we go from there. Maybe we need to do a mini cut. Maybe we need to increase calories a little bit and go into a build phase. Oh, we've got a photo shoot coming. Okay, let's drop into a prep phase. Let's pull calories down. Let's maybe increase cardio. Let's increase non-exercise physical activity, whatever. But we can work towards things if we know what we're working towards.
Absolutely. One of our best functions as coaches is just to keep the goal and not
Yeah,
trail off onto, oh, should I be doing this? Oh, should I be doing that? And not sticking with it long enough. And this is also one of like the big differences I noticed with like Gen Pop, for example, is like when it comes to periodization, like it's kind of like when you try and give a periodized program to a parent and you're like, let's nail it. And then it's like
Yeah,
kid gets sick, they go on vacation, like it just goes to hell. So when it comes to like Gen Pop, it almost ends up being like, are you familiar like with the Matador study, like with dieting?
yeah,
It kind of ends up looking like that, where it's like a couple of weeks, fat loss, a couple of weeks,
yeah,
maintenance, cool. And we just kind of like bounce back and forth and we could drag it on a little bit longer. But like to point out, like what you were talking about, I think a lot on social media is loaded with newbie gains, like these
yeah,
people that can experience that brief moment in time where your body responds really, really well. Or they're like former athletes where they had a lot of really good muscle, they got out of shape, and then they did like some competition and got some crazy transformation where they gained all their old muscle back and lost
yeah,
fat at the same time.
yeah, yeah. Just on that note. So I'm not going to be controversial, but
Hey, I like
some
it.
people,
Let's go back and forth.
some people might hate it. So the people that I work with, and to achieve the level of transformations that they do, no one that I've worked with for in at least the last 4 or 5 years, no one has been vegan. No one has done it on keto. Okay. Or
This is the
largely
best part of the episode. This is what I'm going to make the teaser right here.
that's not me saying they are bad. They're bad diets. Okay. Obviously, if it's a lifestyle choice, if you're vegan for a life from a lifestyle choice perspective, no problem, right? But the people that have achieved that highest level in terms of building their physique, shaping their physique, losing body fat, etc., they tend to not be vegan. Um, yes, we can optimize a vegan diet and we can get you at a level with being vegan, but it just happens to be that those people that are vegan tend to never get to that level where where I'm kind of coaching them. Keto, that's slightly different. Okay, now for the people on my level, they do really well with carbohydrates because they tend to have good genetics. They tend to deal well with carbohydrates. I think that's one
Yeah.
thing. But also because they're consistent with their resistance training sessions. They're very aware of how their body looks and feels as well. They like to have their muscles feel full. They like to kind of have more of a 3D look. And a lower fat approach just tends to work well for them. That tends to be what those people are doing and what I tend to coach in this slightly more of a lower fat approach, if you want to call it that. Not one person has prepped at the highest level using a keto diet. Again, not to say it's bad for a certain person. If you want to lose your first 10 pounds, sure, right? But it can be an option. It's one way to
Yeah.
create a calorie deficit. If it's coached in a good way that can be sustainable, then sure, it can work. I probably still wouldn't do it personally for someone, but it can work. Okay. For people at the highest level that want to lose their last 10 pounds, then it's just not going to work for that person. Um, again, we go back to the person that wants to lose their first 10 pounds. A little bit of portion control can work. It might even just be as simple as some food elimination. I don't want you eating bread for the next week. Cool, we've just lost 5 pounds because you're just not eating bread. That's
Boom.
not
There you
because
go.
that's not because the bread was bad, right? It's because we've just created a little bit of a deficit from somewhere
Yeah. And
and just
and
picked a
you've
food.
pulled and you've pulled the magic of depleting their glycogen stores so they're going to hold on to
Yeah,
less water and less weight. Not less fat,
exactly. Not
but
less fat. Yeah, and that
if it
bread
gets them
sits there.
going, sure.
Yeah, and the bread can be a trigger food for people. So bread people can eat more than what they intended to, which is again why tracking can work. It's that element of accountability. Pasta, I could pull pasta out the diet instead. I don't know. You could pull anything out of someone's diet, or most things out of someone's diet to create a deficit, and it could work. The opposite of that is I think it's called the Twinkie diet. The guy that did a Twinkie diet, I think he was
Yeah,
on
Kansas State guy.
yeah, is it 1,500 calories or something of Twinkies, and he lost some crazy amount of weight. The quality of the food was ridiculous. Okay,
He felt
but
like shit. Like he
yeah,
documented it.
but by simply creating a caloric deficit, regardless of what food he was eating, he, and I think an element of that is that he didn't have to think about what he was eating. It was just, I'm eating this amount of Twinkies every single day that adds up to 1,500 calories or whatever it was. I know what I'm doing, and let's see what happens. Yeah, he lost some weight as a result of that. When it comes to people that are prepping for a photo shoot on the front cover of a national magazine, to compete at a good level, then we're really sweating the small stuff. We are talking about a lower fat approach, but we're sweating the finest of details with things, and sometimes that means that we do have to carb cycle. Okay, again, there is nothing magical about carb cycling. At the end of the day, it's about the amount of calories. Let's say carbohydrates, okay, because we're talking about carbohydrates. The amount of carbohydrates coming in over 24 hours and 7 days a week, that's most important. If we choose to put some more carbohydrates there and less there, you're probably going to get the same results because in a 7 day period, you're having the same amount of carbohydrates. That's what matters most. But from a diet psychology point of view, if I give you some days where in your head you think it's a high carb day, okay, and bear in mind, all I've done is that I've pulled some calories, I've pulled some carbs from those lower carb days, I've pulled some out of there and pulled them into there. So I've now got some days where actually I've got to dig a little bit deeper. And I've got some days where in my head, wow, I've got lots of carbs today. I've got something to look forward to. So, from a diet psychology point of view, I've got something to look forward to that's a day or two ahead. So carbohydrate cycling can work very, very well. Whether I want to put those carbohydrates on training days versus, the low carb days on non-training days, honestly, does not make too much of a difference. Because you could
Yeah.
also argue that the carbohydrates, the high carb day, should be on the recovery day because it helps you recover and will help
And
replenish
your glycogen
glycogen.
stores will actually be full when you go to work out.
Exactly. So you could argue the other way round.
That's one thing I never understood. I'm like, okay, clearly it's fun eating more carbs on training days because you're hungrier. But
Yeah.
if we're really trying to get the best results, wouldn't recovery days make more sense?
Exactly. And that's why it really is just down to that 7 day average. Your body doesn't know whether it's a leg day, a back day, or a rest day, really, as far as the carbohydrates go. They're going to be used when they're going to be used. Either you've got the muscle glycogen stores for it or you don't. It's about the psychology of that. So, having a few
Yeah.
more carbs on that day, and if having a few less on that, it kind of pulls you through the week a little bit more. And if psychologically you've heard because X, Y, and Z bodybuilders are carb cycling and now I'm carb cycling, if that causes you to stay on track, then excellent, you're going to get better results from that because you've got the buy-in.
Yep, exactly, exactly. And now I feel like, just so everybody knows, Gareth is one of those guys I feel like I could talk to for hours on end and not get bored. But we do have to cap it at some point because I do know that you got a little one to put to bed.
I do.
So before I keep adding on and going on, I'll cut it here. And before we do that, though, where can the people find you if they want to see more of your stuff?
Easiest place, Instagram at the Fitness Maverick, or my website, thefitnessmaverick.com. Website's just got a bunch of free stuff, free articles, YouTube's, links to various old articles from different websites that I've been on. That's the easiest place to find me.
Yep. And all of that will be in the show notes, guys. So you don't have to go anywhere. Just click away. Make sure to give Gareth a follow. And you definitely will not be disappointed, especially on Instagram. Some of those exercises are awesome. And I just saw a new one the other day. I'm like, wow, didn't even think of that. So great, great exercise library, but plenty more, like you said. So thank you guys for tuning in all the way through and listening. I know we went into the weeds. Apologies, but we did our best to keep it surface level so everybody was on the same page. The guys, I hope, got a lot out of it. And if you did get a lot out of it, be sure to send it to somebody who you thought of during this, where you're like, wow, they should probably hear that. Okay. And tell them Brian and Gareth say hi. But until next time, I'll see you guys later. Go kick some ass.